Should I just stand here?
Yeah,
If you can.
just if you can, yeah,
I could
just,
get you a handheld if you think that's easier.
It's fine. I think I can
you
just,
can walk around with it.
yeah.
So when you start, I want you to say your name and then your presentation, that's perfect. Then you
Okay.
don't have to have it.
First, if you don't mind, just introduce that this is a Board of Health presentation.
Mhm.
And I guess I don't need to read that because it's about to be by our student intern. Go for it.
Are we taping?
Said 20 seconds. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
This is a presentation by the Board of Health.
My name is Haley Long, and for my Radnor Board of Health student internship project, I decided to focus on the relationship between sleep and academic performance in high school students. So to start off, I first just wanted to introduce the topic, then dive into the science of sleep, sleep and academic success, some challenges facing students in the real world, and then wrap it up with a conclusion. So in my introduction, I first wanted to explain why I chose this topic specifically and the people I interviewed to dive deeper into the field. The reason I decided to focus on sleep is because, at least for me as a teenager, public health can often feel disconnected from everyday life. So by focusing on sleep, I sort of delved into a topic that was common for not only students, but really everyone, and it showed how public health is a really vital part of our everyday lives. I also decided to focus on sleep because oftentimes I see as a student that it can be sacrificed for academics, although there are many research-backed impacts that are correlated with sleep and academic performance. And finally, I wanted to discover some practical strategies for improvement that students can develop into their daily routines so that they can have more healthy sleep routines and schedules. So the people I interviewed for this topic sort of ranged from different subsections in the field of sleep, starting with Dr. Maria Tartaglia. She's a pediatrician at Boston Children's Hospital. I also interviewed Dr. Philip Pearl, who is a professor of neurology at Harvard Medical School. And finally, I interviewed Tisa Baina, who is a licensed social worker and counselor at Bryn Mawr College. So I now wanted to go into the science of sleep, including why sleep matters and teen sleep biology. So we're all aware of the recommended 8 to 10 hours of sleep, but I wanted to get into what actually happens during that time period that makes it so important. First of all, during deep sleep, the body is able to restore itself and restore the daily wear and tear that happens during the day. And then during the deepest stage of sleep, which is rapid eye movement, the brain is able to consolidate memories and overall just clear out what happened during the brain during the day that can cause it to function less efficiently. And then lastly, the glymphatic system is drained during the day, which is essentially a bodily system that will take all of the harmful substances that can build up in the brain and body during the day and clear them out so that the body is ready to function for the next day. And overall, consistent sleep can improve attention, decision-making, mood, and overall academic performance. So as we can tell by these important functions that happen during sleep, sleep is actually a very important academic tool, despite the fact that many students can treat it as a waste of time. And that fact is evidenced by this statistic that shows 97% of students get less than the recommended amount of time of sleep. And this is especially important because the age group of adolescents is actually the most susceptible to the negative impacts of sleep deprivation, more so than adults. One reason why sleep deprivation is so common among teens is because of teen sleep biology. Just because of our age group, oftentimes melatonin is released later in the night as compared to adults and infants, which basically means that our circadian rhythm is changed so that we are naturally predisposed to want to go to bed later and wake up later. However, this causes a real issue when you match this up with the early school start times and heavy workloads that are sort of clashing with our natural bodily rhythms, which make us want to go to bed later, although the real world kind of makes this impossible. So I now wanted to get into how sleep is correlated with academic success, and specifically how it is linked with academic performance, memory, and mental health. Studies find that higher sleep efficiency is heavily correlated with higher grades, and consistent sleep can lead to better attention and focus, improved executive functioning, which is essentially functions that take place in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, including judgment, organization, and planning, which are all very important to being a successful student. And it's also found that earlier bedtimes are linked to better scores, and on this graph, we can see that the more sleep duration you have, the higher your grade point average tends to be. Sleep is also linked with memory. So as I explained a little bit earlier, memory consolidation occurs during rapid eye movement sleep, which is essentially when the brain filters information throughout the day and sort of either turns it into memories that we can remember the next day or just things that we can choose to forget. So obviously as a student, you're going to try to remember all the important information, and you do that through studying. However, oftentimes studying takes the place of sleep instead of working out a healthy balance. So what will happen is students will study more, but they're able to actually remember less. But when we get the adequate amount of sleep, there can be improved information retention, which can actually help students perform better. And lastly, mental health is highly correlated with sleep, because mental health is one of the most important parts of being a successful student, and having a positive mental health can create a positive learning environment. However, with less sleep, we can find increased stress, higher emotional reactivity, and a higher risk of anxiety and depression. These can overall lead to reduced emotional regulation and a greater daily feeling of overwhelm, which can lead to students being not only less effective students, but less well-functioning people, which is obviously really harmful to the body, the brain, and the overall emotional health of students. I now wanted to go into some challenges facing students in the everyday world, including barriers to healthy sleep and the cycle of sleep deprivation that many students can fall into. So some barriers to healthy sleep include academic workload, such as heavy homework, studying, and academic pressure, which can all lead to students feeling like they don't have enough time to have a healthy sleep schedule and routine, so they sacrifice the time for sleep in place of homework and studying. Additionally, there's screens and social media, specifically the blue light on phones can delay the release of melatonin, which is a neurochemical that can make people feel sleepy. So again, this will lead to students wanting to go to bed later, which overall just makes it more difficult to go to bed at a normal time. Additionally, there's been a really big uptake in the trend of teachers assigning work due at 11:59, which is essentially not encouraging students, but giving them the opportunity to do work more last minute, which can sort of cause them to start the work later and then finish it just at the deadline, which can lead to more stress, which overall leads them to go to bed to a later time. And then lastly, we have extracurricular activities such as sports, clubs, and jobs, which together with these other factors reduce the amount of time and availability for sleep in a student's schedule. These factors can often lead students to fall into a cycle of sleep deprivation, including myself, without even realizing it. It can start with not getting enough sleep one night because of one of the factors that I described earlier. This can lead to poor focus during the day, which can lead them to not be able to memorize a lot of the information they need to, and overall just be a less effective student. And less sleep also leads to them having a longer amount of time for homework, because if they have less willpower and less sort of mental acuity, they're not going to be able to get through tasks as fast as they would if they were well rested. Additionally, less sleep can lead to increased stress and reduced emotional regulation, and these factors can lead to an even later bedtime the following night, which can again reinforce this cycle, and it can continue happening without students being able to find a practical way out of it. So to conclude, I wanted to go over some ways that students can sort of fight this trend of sleep deprivation and sleep loss, and some key takeaways from my project. So some strategies and solutions that I discovered were firstly having a consistent bedtime and wake time. I thought this was an especially important tip because even if you're not able to maybe get 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night, if you go to bed at the same time each night and morning, although it might not be the right amount of time, if your brain is used to going to bed at a certain time and then waking up at a normal amount of time, your sleep will be more efficient because the brain can sort of regulate itself and expect that certain amount of time. Additionally, reducing nighttime screen use can be a really effective way to have more sleep each night because studies have found that students who, or not students, just anyone really, who puts their phone away an hour before bed gets 21 more minutes of sleep on average each night. Additionally, incorporating morning and daytime exercise into your routine causes a spike in cortisol to happen at the right amount of time, which can lead to decreased brain fog and can decrease a lot of the symptoms of sleep deprivation, which can lead to students having a more concrete routine and allow them to get through the rest of their day more efficiently, which then will lead to an earlier bedtime. Additionally, having morning light exposure and then a dark sleep environment can sort of help trigger the brain to release melatonin at the right times. And then finally, what is important to remember about these strategies and solutions is when incorporating them into your daily routines, it's important to really choose one at a time and try to incorporate them slowly because the key to healthy sleep is not overhauling your whole routine and then inevitably making a mistake. It's more just trying to find out what works for you and putting these small changes into effect over time to create a more healthy routine overall. So some key takeaways from the presentation are, most importantly, that sleep is not a waste of time. It is actually one of the #1 tools that students can use to support their learning. And that is backed by the fact that better sleep leads to better grades, and that's supported by many studies that show that it is essential for memory, mental health, and mood. And also, it's important to remember that although there are so many barriers getting in the way of healthy sleep, many of these barriers are preventable. And if students are educated about the topic and sort of able to prioritize what's important to them, they are able to get past these barriers and develop a healthy sleep schedule. And finally, by incorporating some of the healthy habits that I've talked about, students can be able to sort of reevaluate what's important to them and develop a healthy sleep schedule that will support their mind, brain, and body, and especially their academic performance. Thank you.
Haley, that was very well done. There was a lot of information in that. Really well done. Yeah, that was amazing, and we know how important good sleep hygiene is. You and I have talked over the months about students who we were just talking last night about how students tend to bode, how, I only got 2 hours of sleep last night because I was up studying and this and that. We know that that becomes a thing, and we were talking last night about how you can take a project like this because you have so much great information in this project and what you can do with it perhaps in your own environment like Radnor. Will you take something like this perhaps and will you be able to share that with anybody there or?
Definitely. So my school's not a program, but a lot of students are able to submit sort of posters and they can post them around the school. And it's usually, I've seen things about like healthy relationships, problems with like gambling and like alcohol intake. And I think that this could really fit well if I turned it into a poster into that overall field of physical and mental well-being. So I think it's definitely available to like post this in my school. And I think that if this was just seen like in the hallways or the bathrooms, students could see it and maybe just learn something new, or even if they don't take a lot of information from it, they could at least be like prompted to think a little deeper about their sleep schedules and routines so that they're able to take some of the information and try to incorporate a small amount of it into their routine, which I think could help change a lot of the like negative sleep talk that's seen in those environments.
Yeah, really important.
Yeah, I also think that your point about screen use and stopping that an hour before is an easy bullet point, and that's actually relatively easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's something they'll see and maybe would try it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Really well done, Haley. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow.